It's your guy. It's your boy, Jaron, back again with another podcast for the Quasar Qult. This is episode 4. This is a live podcast that we do on Facebook Live. Feel free to participate in the comment section. I might read your comments and it might end up in the podcast. But this podcast, this podcast actually represents the Quasar Qult, which is a new blog that I launched not too long ago that focuses on dope content and just cool stuff in general. And basically what we do is we talk about recent events, posts that I made on the Quasar Qult, new music, stuff like that, and stuff that's going on in the scene. Sometimes, kind of depends on how I feel. For those of you who don't know, I'm Jaron, multimedia artist for the last 7 to 8 years. I do video production, film production, working on my first movie, The Bond, coming out in theaters or premiering in theaters December 19th. I have a new album called The Setting Sun coming very, very soon. I just announced my release show November 14th at Thunder Canyon Brewery. So tickets are available for that, so make sure you cop those. I will put a link in the comment section. So yeah, this podcast usually talks about recent news, recent events. But I've been hearing a lot of wild stuff in my timeline and seeing some stuff. So we're going to address that, but not quite yet. I want to talk about some other stuff first. Some of the other topics that we posted on the Quasar Qult, which you can check out in the comment section. It is an ongoing blog. There is a link to submit music. So if you think you got the hot fire, please submit it. Check it out. Post on the Quasar Qult. We recently posted songs on there from Ben Fly, Dobby Fresh, J Rob, and Futuristic. All awesome videos. Make sure you check them out and support your local scene, because that's what we're doing, supporting the scene. With that said, I want to talk about Adele. Yes, I have an obsession with Adele. I don't know why I be talking about Adele all the time, but I just really like Adele, man. Adele's dope. Anyway, so if you guys have been paying attention, she just dropped her new single called Easy on Me. Great single. I mean, it's okay. It's not the mind-blowing, super power ballad that I was wanting from her. You can actually see my full review on the Quasar Qult. Actually, on Star Trek TV, there's a review on there that talks about the song more. But the song was cool. I mean, it wasn't like, oh my God, my heart is feeling with the energy of Adele, but it does its thing. But the reason why I bring up Adele again is because apparently she's just out there breaking mad records. Her song was actually the most added song in radio history this past week, which is a record that I didn't even know that you could break, but Adele did that. She, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I wish I would have brought the article, but her song was basically the most added song to radio stations across the board ever, since her last song, which was the previous record. If I remember the article correctly, her last big single, Hello, was the song that was the previous record. But what's fascinating about this is that Adele was being added to like alternative rock stations, R&B stations, soul stations, jazz, like stations that you wouldn't necessarily expect Adele to be playing. Were playing Adele. Hip hop stations were running Adele's song. Her numbers were just mind blowing. And if you remember my last podcast when I was talking about Adele, I was basically saying that I'm watching her roll out very, very, very closely because of the fact that she might have the record for most successful first album or first week release. I might be wrong on that. Someone might fact check me on that. I know that time has changed, but her last album sold over 3 million copies the first week, purely physical. She didn't even drop it on Spotify or anything like that. Purely physical copies. She broke the record. So, and that was like 5 years ago. So with that in mind, I'm just really fascinated about how they're going to approach this rollout, because there's a lot of pressure on her to outsell herself, right? So the fact that she's the most added to all these radio stations is an interesting strategy, because I guarantee that you're going to hear this song everywhere for the next couple weeks. Everywhere. It's going to be all over the place. It's going to be a really interesting fourth quarter in general, because I think that we're going to see a lot of really, really big releases. I know Kendrick Lamar's on the way. Dr. Dre's rumored to drop an album. Eminem. There's a lot of artists who are considered to be quote unquote A-list that are supposed to be dropping here soon. But in my opinion, Adele is the one, and her album 30 is probably one of the most anticipated albums in recent years. So like I said, I'm watching her roll out just really, really closely, studying this shit just to be like, what is she doing? Where's her label doing? How are they doing this? And so far, like, she's not doing anything too crazy. I think that the biggest key to this, and this is why I tell artists all the time, it's about being out there and being seen and being in the mix. It's less important about your music, because you can have super fire content. You can have like the dopest track in the history of music, but if no one knows who you are or cares about your story, then no one's gonna really try to listen to your music. You just have to kind of just hope that someone clicks play randomly. And when I really think about this, Adele's rollout actually started about a year ago when she came out of hiding, lost a bunch of weight, started dating Skepta for a while, wore the Jamaican outfit and got ethered for that. And then she started showing up at playoff games and started dating. She's currently dating NBA or LeBron James's manager, Rich Paul. And I'm realizing that all these little moves, that all these little news blips are all part of the rollout, because especially with Adele's music, because Adele's music is very story based. It's all about her story. And so you kind of have to create this narrative going into the album so people are interested and want to know why you're making the decisions that you're making. You know what I'm saying? So, and she even said so in her interview where she was like, oh yeah, you know, this album's about my divorce. She talks about wearing the Jamaican costume or whatever at the festival or whatever. She talks about dating Rich Paul. So basically all these things that you've seen over the last year, they're now going to be playing out in this album. And technically speaking, the rollout started the day that she decided to get back in the spotlight. Now, how does this apply to the local artists? Well, a lot of local artists out here just like to be seen and be heard. They're paying for interviews and just kind of being heard. But you have to create some type of narrative of your story. You have to point your fans in a certain direction, even if it's just breadcrumbs. Like going into your album, going into whatever major project you're about to release, you kind of have to like drop these little breadcrumbs about what the hell you're going to be talking about. You have to keep people's interest, even if it's subtle. Now, obviously, we're not all Adele, and we don't have paparazzi out here snapping photos of us at Circle K buying Black and Milds. Like, that's not something that we're seeing out there. So the big difference between being a local artist and being Adele is that as a local artist, your goal is to really make people interested. You have to be compelling, do something that it makes you stand out from the rest, whether it's doing a damn podcast with your logo in the corner right there, or, you know, telling your story on TikTok. There's a million ways to get it. You know what I'm saying? That's how the phrase goes, right? And so, yeah, watching these labels really roll out Adele as they lead up to this 30 album has been super fascinating, because I've come to realize that, man, her rollout really did start like a year ago, because we all want to know why she's doing the things that she's doing. We all want to know why she's out there running around with Skepta, or she was for a little bit, and she might address that on the album, right? And it makes sense from like a paparazzi celebrity type of way, where, like, you know, I think about all these celebrities, right? You hear about how celebrities will pay paparazzi to come take photos of them at certain locations when they have a movie coming out or something like that, just so they can be ran Us Weekly or whatever. Same deal. It's the same thing. And, like, you know, Adele's in a certain tier of interest, you know what I'm saying? Because she is a female, she's attractive, and people want to know what her story is. So it's a little bit different. Good. I'm glad that the logo's covered by the red. They don't need to know that I'm live. They need to know that the setting sun's coming. Sorry, I'm reading my comments. Anyways, I digress. Yeah, Adele's in a certain different category. It's like a Taylor Swifty type of drama category, where it's different from being a rapper, right? Like, if you're just a rapper out there rapping, drama is supposed to be following you, but a lot of rappers don't put that drama into their story. They rap about like other stuff. Adele is driven by her story. That's just how it goes for her. So yeah, super fascinated. She broke the record for most added song on radio ever. We actually didn't even run this story on the Quasar Qult. I didn't have a chance to post it, but that was a story I was going to run and talk about in the podcast, but I'm doing it now because that's how I roll. Another story that we didn't run on the Quasar Qult this week has to do with Dave Chappelle, and mostly because I didn't want to ride the Dave Chappelle train too much, because he is the current hot story out right now. I didn't want it to seem like, oh, they're just supposed to do, which is kind of what we do. But I don't know. I'm so weird when it comes to this blogging stuff. I'm very delicate on how I approach this blogging shit. But as you guys know, in this ongoing story following David Chappelle, Netflix basically backed Dave Chappelle and said, yo, we got your back. Some employees tried to quit and cause a walkout. They picketed the Netflix building. Dave Chappelle was like, y'all are wild, but I'll sit down and talk to you. Because at the end of the day, Dave Chappelle's not a villain. And I think that's like the wild part. I think this is the brilliance of David's stand-up. When we look back, I keep calling him David, but David. When we look back at his stand-up 10 years from now, we're going to look back at all this and be like, man, Dave Chappelle was really trying to do something. He really was trying to shine light on this very, very powerful weapon that is the ability to cancel somebody and the reasons why you can cancel somebody. And to me, it's a very sensitive topic because, and I try not to dive into it, especially these days, because I just have more positive things to focus on in my life. But I made a little Instagram reel, and on this Instagram reel, I talked about how there's not really like a lot of great comedy movies anymore. I can't remember the last great comedy movie that the whole world was floored by. It's been a while, and I attribute a lot of that to cancel culture. I didn't mention anything about Dave Chappelle in the comment section, but a comment did start up about Dave Chappelle between a couple of people, and what the points that were made were very strong. And I understand that we all have our soul to protect when it comes to just living this life, right? And if you're out there trying to figure out this being a human thing, which, by the way, no one has really figured out yet, despite what people will try to tell you, we're all trying to figure this out as we go along. None of us have the real answers to what it means to be a human being or what it means to even be alive or existence. It's all just like fluid, right? And so that's why I don't really have much to say about the LGBTQ community when it comes to that, because as Dave Chappelle kind of alluded to in his podcast, these are all people just trying to figure out their path, just like me, just like you, just like anybody out there. But the problem with the internet and the problem with society in general recently is that we all feel that our voice is important. And it's fair to say that it is. But the caveat to that is that important is only relevant to you. And that's where it gets kind of messed up, because, you know, it's so easy to hop on the internet and find people who feel like you, and people who have the same interests as you, and people who might see the world the same way as you. It's very easy to find these people now, thanks to the technology that is your phone line / cable connection connecting to some dude in Japan. It's crazy. And because of this, we're drawing closer and closer to the singularity, which I'm a big proponent of. I feel that the singularity is the ultimate end game of human existence. And I'm not going to dive into this because this is not that type of podcast, but basically the singularity is what it sounds like. It's when the human consciousness becomes one singular thought and one singular being on a quest for higher enlightenment and higher consciousness. And the internet is a tool to reach that level, because it allows us to all think and connect and share our thoughts and ideas immediately. But the problem with our with all this is that our growth is a little bit too fast right now. Things are moving too fast in this world to where we're not really processing all of this amazing stuff that we have, we just use it. I have this phone right here, right? Like this little box. And I tell my son this all the time because he just got a phone. But this phone, this smartphone that we have is literally like one of the craziest inventions of all time. It can answer your questions. It can get you a date. It can get you food. It can get you money. It can get you sex. It can get you basically every single human desire that you have or want can all come from this magical rectangle. And I noticed that all the things that I mentioned are relatively positive, right? But we don't really talk about the negative side of things, right? You can hate on somebody on these phones. You can really hurt somebody psychologically on these phones. You can hurt yourself on these phones. You can do all these things that are detrimental to our overall well-being. And as a proponent of balance, someone who believes that everything comes with a balance, the scales are kind of tipped in the negative direction right now. And a lot of that has to do with how these algorithms are set up with social media and how these companies, these corporations, and these government entities are controlling the narrative to create unrest and confusion and anger and frustration, because it's really easy to control somebody when they're angry. And this is something that you may have experienced it yourself, but this is psychological warfare, right? When somebody's upset, you can manipulate the hell out of somebody when they're upset because they're not thinking clearly. Their emotions are running high. Their synapses are all firing off. They're not reacting in a way that may be really genuine to who they are. And this is a long-winded preamble I went on, but when you apply this to cancel culture, this is when it gets kind of messed up, because a lot of people feel like that's like their only choice, is to try and cancel someone, is to try and hurt somebody, is to try to take somebody else down because that person has a viewpoint of the world that's different from them. Now, obviously, I'm super generalizing that statement because we've seen hate crimes of all degrees happen when it comes down to this narrative of people being attacked for being different. And this goes beyond LGBTQ. This applies to race. This applies to people who are disabled or mentally handicapped. But as I said before, I am a proponent of balance, meaning that has to exist to a degree. If you take a basic philosophy class, philosophy 101, which I highly suggest that everybody do at some point, take a philosophy class, even if you're not trying to get a degree, take a philosophy class and start to see how this world was seen by other people and how their viewpoint shaped this world into what it is right now. And that's the craziest thing about this, because everything that we know about this world stems from previous preconceived notions. It's not like anybody here really has the answers, as I said before. So when you apply all this to Dave Chappelle, who all he is a man, all he is a dude trying to figure this out, funny, has a talent, shares that talent with the world. And the talent that he has is a special one, because being a comedian is it's your opinion. It's like literally just your opinion on the world. Typically, if you're like if you're a Dave Chappelle type of comedian, it's your opinion that you're sharing with the world. And Dave turned that into a multi-million-dollar empire. So he owes nothing to anybody, to no one. I'm saying he owes nothing to no one. But the thing about it is, there's a sense of obligation to speak on the world how you see it, and never conforming yourself to society or to the pressures of these other people trying to figure it out. And that's basically what I got from the closer. And the problem is because we have these internet accesses where people can sit here and be empowered by their fellow whatever, and then they can get together and form a movement to take down other people who don't agree with them. That is super dangerous, man. And this goes beyond LGBTQ. This goes beyond Black Lives Matter. This goes beyond Trump fans or all that stuff. This is something that, as someone who's a proponent of the singularity, I see this as the opposite direction, right? We're becoming so individual that we're almost restarting the cycle of like tribalism, where it's like, oh yeah, you know, I'm over here and you're over there, and you say something that offends me and I have a problem with that. But it's like, that's how life works. Not everybody's going to agree with you. Not everybody's going to see the world the same way that you do. And if you can't accept that, then you have a hard life ahead of you. Unless you do have 1 million people on your Facebook group or a Twitter page or whatever that feel the same way about you now, right? Because now we can cancel somebody. We can stop listening to their music, or we can get them, or stop having them get work. You notice how this mostly applies to politicians in the entertainment industry. We're not over here canceling Karen who works over at Fry's, although it has happened before, right? But that's usually after stories go viral, right? Or someone who has been offended goes and posts a story on their Facebook page, you know, like, oh, so and so said this about me, so now can we all cancel this person and ruin their life? And basically that's what happens. It's wild. Like, it's crazy that we're able to do that. And it's such a powerful weapon because there's no real sense of accountability. And if the movement's big enough, there's no one to blame. Like, you could point fingers at so-and-so and be like, well, this person was the one who tweeted that, right? And said that. And then, but what about the 40,000 people that liked and reshared it and then had some slick shit to say about it, right? Like, it goes beyond a person's opinion and more about the ability to mobilize around a person's opinion and turn it into a weapon. It's crazy. We live in crazy times when it comes to that. I think it's actually probably the most dangerous thing about our society is our ability to mobilize around people's opinions. That's basically how Trump became president, and that's how Biden became president too. Damn, to be straight up honest about it. But I digress. The point is that we have to be careful to avoid the echo chambers and the confirmation bias, and take more time to listen to your fellow man and open up your heart to really understand that we're all just trying to figure this shit out as we go along. I'm 37 years old. I still don't know how this world works, how it's supposed to. I think I do. I'm doing all right. I'm saying I'm following the things that we're supposed to do to be in society, right? Like, make money and be happy. You know what I'm saying? Like, but are we really doing it right? We don't really know. And we probably never will know. Maybe when we die, who knows, right? I just know that we live in wild times. We live in wild times. Man. Anyways, I want to talk about these podcasts because y'all are wild. And I like that no one's watching this right now because I'm going to post this up in clips and y'all can really hear what I have to say and I don't have to worry about y'all interrupting me with your comments and your wild stuff. But basically, you know, first of all, let's break down this term podcast, because I'm seeing this word just thrown around this super heavy right now. By definition, you know, a podcast is basically like a streaming show that contains mostly dialogue with content of an informative manner that's usually ranges to the 15 to 4-hour range. I've seen 4-hour long podcasts. The art of the podcast is a very, very delicate one. Hell, I barely even call what I'm doing right now a podcast. But I do make a point to do a few things when it comes to these podcast type of shows that I do. One, I make sure that I do or say something that is extremely informative and leave you feeling that you learned something or that you gained something from this. Whether you didn't know about Adele's streaming record, or maybe you didn't know about all the stuff I was just saying right now. Maybe I said something that was like, oh, that's interesting. Because at the end of the day, podcasts are supposed to be interesting. They're supposed to be compelling. They're supposed to be a form of storytelling, which is something that I really love. And some of the best podcasts I listen to are like, you know, really calm people talking about how they built Napster and, you know, interesting stuff about the brain and psychological stuff. And, you know, there's a whole wealth of podcasts. Some of my favorite podcasts are film podcasts where they talk about movies and they break down why the movie is the way it is, what it is, and why they write it, and like the director and all this stuff. Like really interesting fact-finding stuff. And it takes a lot of work to make these podcasts too, because a lot of people put in a lot of research, and they might add some music, and they might add some cool sound effects or some interviews and stuff like that. Some of my favorite podcasters are like you know, Malcolm Gladwell or Hidden Brain and NPR. These are podcasts that you could tell that people put in effort into these streaming events, because that's what they are. They're streaming events. I'm saying they're moments. And I listen to podcasts all the time. I love them. So when people throw around this word podcast to me, it triggers me a little bit, because like what I'm seeing people do is not podcasts. It's not that. It's not that. It's more in line with like Alex Jones, Fox News, political pundit type shit, where it's not necessarily even fact-based so much, or educational or informative. It's mostly just hate and vitriol and just ways to hold people's attention, because you're operating on a frequency that is so aggressive that you kind of have to watch. It's almost like watching a train wreck. And it's frustrating to me because I blame Joe Budden for all this, because Joe Budden is the master of the angry podcast. He has coined the lane of yelling into a microphone and being aggressive and saying things that are all opinion, but people agree with him because he's aggressive about it. And to me, it's like, I'd rather just talk to you softly and just really explain to you my position on things. And this is not even like a shot to anybody in particular, because there's like 40,000 of you. There's a lot of y'all out there who are just yelling into the microphone and being mean and just saying rude shit and just overall being just dickish. And it's like, do what you need to do, because I know some of y'all are making money off of this. Some of y'all are doing your thing. Some of y'all are feeding your families off of this. But at the end of the day, y'all need to kind of step back from the vitriol. I'm saying you're coming in a little hot. I'm scrolling through my timeline. I'm seeing dudes yelling. I can feel the hot breath on my face as you scream about local rappers and local other pundits out there doing the same exact shit that you're doing, but you hate them because they're white or whatever the fuck you guys are talking about. It's a little messy out there. And this will be the only time that I speak on this situation, because y'all keep tagging me in posts, y'all keep tagging me in your videos saying, oh, Jaron Eichner's doing this, Jaron Eichner's making a movie, Jaron Eichner's doing this and this and this. And it's like, bro, I've been doing this for a minute. And shit changed with the fucking address in the mail. That's it. I've been doing this for a minute. I just get better at it, because I understand that this is the power of communication, the power of language. I actually spoke to my son about this recently. I asked him, how would you define language? And he couldn't really give it a definition. I mean, he's 10 years old. I don't expect him to have some really poetic answer to that. But I explained to him that all language is me flexing my vocal cords to certain frequencies. They fly out of my mouth, they hit your ears, they run into your brain, they fire synapses, and you react to it. That's all it is. That's all communication is all language is, right? So, you know, that's why you have different languages across the world, because we're based on where you live and what you know. That's kind of how you speak, and that's how you talk to people, and that's human nature, right? So it's always interesting to me when I hear people be like, oh, well, you know, I'm just doing this because I can. I don't give a fuck about anybody. It's like, well, you're kind of BSing a little bit, because when people scream that they're nobody's fan, or people scream that they just do it for the music, or when people say that, oh, people don't fuck with me, or because their music's trash and they got to do better, like, all you're doing is just shooting out a weird frequency for people to hold on to. And then you get mad when people respond to that. But it's like, that's the frequency you put out there. You get what you put out. If you're out there yelling in a podcast, don't be surprised if somebody's in your inbox yelling at you. That's the golden rule. We learned that in kindergarten. So that's why I don't really respond to a lot of these. I might pop in and like listen to what these people are saying, but they're all saying the same shit, just in different vocal tones. But they're all saying the same thing. And they're all mad. Everybody's mad. And it's like a movement. It's the angry podcast movement. It's really weird. I don't like to watch people yell. Unless you're yelling about something that you're really just passionate about. That you will shed tears over, or shed blood over, or die over. That your heart and soul is into. That's the only time I want to see people yelling on my timeline. I don't want to see you yell because you're mad because somebody was mad at you, because you pissed them off because of something you said. It's a cycle. It's gross. It's really gross. Stop it. Please stop it. And that's why I kind of put a ban, because people keep asking me. They're like, yo, come on my show and do an interview, or like, yo, you should have on my podcast. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Because y'all ain't on the right frequency that I need to be on to do what I need to do. I'm trying to communicate to people on a level that's worldwide. I'm trying, like I said, as I said earlier on, I'm a proponent of the singularity. I believe in us coming together. Y'all just want to bring me on your podcast and your interviews for the smoke. How do I know? Because you did it before. Y'all know who you are. So, I'm not going to be hopping on your shows, but I do have to go on a press run. I have a film coming out. I have an album. I always use the wrong hand. It's right there. Right there. Yeah, right there. The Setting Sun is coming out here very soon. I have to go on a press run. If I'm trying to do this right, I'm going to have to talk to some of you motherfuckers, right? I'm going to figure that out. But, or maybe I just keep doing these podcasts and start tagging y'all. I'm like, well, you can just take what I say to you in this and we can do it that way. But it's a turnoff. And I know that if I feel this way, then there's people looking at us from the outside looking in who feel the same exact way. And worse. Because the thing about it is that I know some of you people personally, at least enough to see your growth and your progress and what you've done and where you're going, etc. so forth. I've seen it. So, and I'm rooting for everybody. I want to see everybody win, but I also want to see people start building their legacies that are going to define who they are as a person. And I know for a fact that some of y'all are going to look back on your Facebook memories 5 years from now and be like, damn, I was into wild shit. I know it. How do I know? Because I've done it myself. I was there. I was in these live streams yelling at you guys about all the same shit that you guys are yelling about. I was doing that 3 or 4 years ago. So that's part of it too, because I'm just like always ahead of y'all. 3 or 4 years from now, y'all will start making really thoughtful podcasts about artist bios, or like stories from Maryvale, or things that only Phoenix podcasters can tell. Because anybody can yell at people about not sending their music properly. I can do that. I've done it. But what can you offer as the individual human being that you have sired, that you were brought into this world to be? What can you do? This is something I ask myself every single day. And this is something I tell my clients and people I work with every single day, that every single person in this world has a story that only they can tell. I think I said this in the last podcast. I'll probably say this every single podcast for the next couple of podcasts. That's the theme that I'm on right now. Is that we all are trying to do things that other people can do. And I'm a victim of that too. Like, I'm not special. I'm not over here like doing it that different, right? But I try. I believe that I'm a creative genius to a degree. I believe that I'm capable of doing some pretty awesome stuff just from the power of my mind. Look at everything that I've done so far. It's all been from the power of my mind. Literally started from a thought. And I have a movie coming out, and all this amazing stuff in my life that you see has all started with the power of thought. And my strongest chakra is my voice. I know this. This is why I love doing podcasts and love talking with people and having these conversations with people, because there's a discovery process when you have these conversations. And this is what we should be doing. We should be trying to discover. We should be trying to learn. We should be trying to grow. We should be trying to connect with people in ways that we just have never done so before. That's to me the meaning of life. Is to fire off synapses in your brain that have never been fired before, because you went to a new city, or you had a conversation with somebody that you've never done before, or you read a book that made you see the world differently. This is all about experience. The human experience, and trying to hold on to it. And like I said before, nobody has this shit figured out. People think that they do, but what can you do about it? What can you do about it? But this is a good place to end the podcast. I appreciate you guys watching and listening. This podcast was brought to you by The Bond. Check out the new trailer at thebondmovie.com. We have another trailer coming soon. We're just finishing up color right now and sound. Very excited for this film to share with y'all. And we're trying to go ahead and do this world premiere, I guess is what we're calling it. December 19th over at Arizona Mills. I will have tickets available soon for that, so please stay tuned for that. Speaking of tickets, my release show, The Setting Sun, is November 14th at Thunder Canyon Brewery in Tucson, Arizona. I'm doing my release show in Tucson, Arizona because that's my city. And that's who I fuck with more than anybody else in Phoenix. I'm sorry, Tucson just gets the show first. I'm working on a release show up here in Phoenix as well. But yeah, Tucson gets it first. So November 14th, we're doing a release show. We're bringing out a couple cats that I'm excited to hear from. Some of them are newer and people I haven't worked with before, and some of them are family. That's how we do it. Shout out to Runt, aka James Owens, over at Thunder Canyon Brewing for hooking us up. Like I said, the flyer's out on my page. Tickets are available now. Yeah, we got a lot of videos coming out soon for this album. It's almost is about time to start this rollout. So I'm pretty excited about that because I got a lot of cool content that I want to share with y'all. And yeah, that's it. So thanks for listening to the Quasar Qult podcast. Make sure you check out Quasar Qult because we're doing a lot of cool shit. I'm actually bringing on some more people to do some more blog posts. We're going to start selling press releases and bios on there so you guys can get some well-written bios by an acclaimed writer. That's me. And other cool stuff that we got set up. We got some merch on there. It's gonna be tight. It's gonna be tight. So go check out the blog, please. Appreciate you guys. Follow it. Quasar Qult. We out here. Thanks for watching and listening and being in the cult. Stay quasi. That was Dan who came up with that. So peace.